before college. And during this time, I was applying to college, figuring out kind of what path and what things I wanted to do. And keep in mind that for me, before college, I didn't know what it meant to um, be a part of a club or to um, be a part of any kind of organization or to do something impactful with my community. I just had no idea, especially having lived and moved. That was just my life, moving, moving, moving. So if you've ever felt yourself like, I've never done this before, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to, like with pre-med, there's just so much to do. Just know that, someone like me, I've been there before, and you can have those accomplishments in life, even though you may have not done that in high school. And so I was kind of just getting everything figured out in this time period. And I was also working as a substitute in a special education department. And that was very eye-opening, and it was very interesting to work and have real life experience as opposed to being in the classroom. So that's something I really enjoyed. And college, I went to the University of New Hampshire, and there's two campuses. I went to the one in Manchester, and I commuted there. I didn't live in a dorm. I didn't do any of that. My community involvement, I was the president of Tri Beta, which is the Biological Honor Society, and I don't know if any of you guys have heard of it. And that was actually my senior year. I also founded and led the music club. And I absolutely loved it. That wasn't at my campus, and there was nothing of the sort. So it was really nice to be able to be a part of something that I had been doing for so long, like with music. In terms of healthcare, I was a licensed nursing assistant for 3 years in a nursing home and a home care agency. Uh, I don't know, there's different requirements to being a nursing assistant. Some of them in different states are certified or licensed, and mine was like a 3-week course. It was 8 to 5, 2 weeks of doing stuff like in class and a week of clinicals, and then I was out the door. Um, that was probably my most valuable experience I had, and I'll go into that later on, but it was unbelievable, and it was a massive talking point during my med school interviews. They absolutely loved it. And working with people that are, you know, they're old and they're retired and they've been living in these nursing homes for 20 years or so, you realize a lot, you see a lot, and uh, it's indescribable. And I recommend it to anybody that I'm giving advice to. For volunteer work, I was a volunteer at Massachusetts General Hospital for 3 years in the chemotherapy unit. I did kind of, the usual what you hear. Gave the snacks, I gave I gave the talks, walked around, I asked if they needed anything during their chemotherapy treatment. And this was really interesting for me because I liked seeing things in the city setting, especially, New Hampshire. It's just, it's rural, it's very different from the city. And so getting to experience that was really interesting, in seeing people come in from so many different backgrounds. Coming into the hospital was something that I really enjoyed. And I also did volunteer work at the with Patient Support Corps in Dartmouth Hitchcock. And I would call patients beforehand to prep them for appointments, and then attend the appointments with them. And then I'd take notes, I'd write a summary, and I could also record the appointment. And if you guys, if you ever find this opportunity, definitely, do it, because it was amazing in that I was able to work directly with the patient. And an issue, a big thing in medicine is you try not to use too much jargon, and sometimes maybe you can't help it, or that person really may not have that kind of background to be able to understand some of the points that you talk about. So as the volunteer being there trying to translate that for them afterwards so that they can look at it, they may follow treatment plans better. They may feel like they got more out of that appointment and don't have to go for more appointments, or don't have to go back to just readdress those same issues. And for my research, I did several projects, one being a landscape study, and this was on education, looking at New Hampshire and what kind of resources it was providing for its students. K through 12, like, is Rockingham County providing students with enough courses on computer science? And if not, then what are they providing? And just trying to see the deficiencies throughout the state. And that one was really a great one with me because it was my first experience. I kind of just went into it and was just going to see, would I like research? I don't know. How would it go? And things kind of skyrocketed off from that because I met one of my professors. He introduced me to the pediatric anxiety training study, and that was my major research study. I did IRB approval, which is institutional review approval. It's looking, you have a study and then you want to get approved by your campus, their IRB. It's ethical. If you have any subjects involved, that those are ethical as well. So I was able to write reports on that. I received several grants, travel grants to conferences like in DC, or grants to fill out, to give gift cards to people for participating in the study, whatever it may be. I did a lot with that. I actually published one of my articles through this research that I did. And then I also created a study on child traumatic brain injuries and looking at what may impact a parent's decision not to follow or to follow medical advice following their child's brain injury. So, for example, Timmy gets a brain injury, they go into the hospital, doctor says, your child shouldn't go to school. But then the child says, I want to go to school. What is the parent's decision? What do they take into account? And then I did a lab, or like a lab bench or a bench work research, working, I got, the hood, working under the hood, and I sequenced the genome of a bacteria that was not sequenced before. And this was really exciting because it is something that's never been done before for that specific organism. And I was able to publish into a microbiology journal. And so those are the two ones, and I can dive into that more or answer some questions regarding that research. But it was very interesting to see things from a more lab setting as opposed to a clinical setting, like the anxiety one, or the computer science, or the child traumatic brain injuries. And then after that, I had my gap year. After I graduated I had a Bachelor of Science in biotechnology. And in my gap year, I worked as a licensed nursing assistant. I spent time with family because for 4 years I was just grinding the entire time, doing so many different things. And then I also applied to medical school. And that in itself was almost like a job. A lot went into it for me. And then here I am now in medical school. And I started back in July, and they start pretty early. They want to give students the opportunity to be able to have all of that material that needs to be learned, especially because of the fact that UNE, and that's I'll kind of refer to it as that, UNE spends a massive amount of time on anatomy. And I did actually post a TikTok video on that kind of recently, on anatomy being a course I wish I took beforehand, but they go into every single detail for a whole year of anatomy. And usually people in other medical schools will spend maybe only a block, and a block is 4 to 6 weeks or so. And you go into all of the muscles, like lower extremity, upper extremity, back, neck, the brain, like absolutely everything. Muscles, you got attachments, arteries, nerves, function, joints, ligaments, tendons, all of that. And then what are the clinical presentations of a nerve entrapment, like being able to apply all that knowledge. So they want to have the ability to encompass all of that. And then when we go into rotations third year, we have that knowledge base and we're better prepared to, to contribute to conversations with attendings, or to, speak with residents on that certain muscle and why do I think that it's maybe an MSK, a musculoskeletal issue, whatever it may be. Now, research and publishing. A common thing that I get is whether or not to stress about research and to publish. I would say no, because unless you're doing an MD, PhD, and you shouldn't stress about it, because it's not that every single person applying is going to have it. But at the same time, if you don't have it, maybe you're basing more of your experience on healthcare. Maybe you're basing more of your experience on starting a nonprofit, like whatever it may be. There's like every application is unique. So don't, think about this at night. Like, I need to figure this research out. I need to decide what this is now. Because if you're passionate about community stuff and, health disparities in the community, then be passionate about it. And it'll show through your application. It'll show when you're in that interview, because you light up when you talk about it. But at the same time, right, what if you want to get into it? You're in college, or you're gonna go to college, and you're thinking, how do I find what I like? And for me, I recommend, I guess for me, what I ended up doing was, I knew someone that researcher with the computer science, that New Hampshire, the education research. I knew them, and I just kind of was like, they recruited me. They said that they liked my work, and then with a program that I helped out with, I was like, why not? Why don't I just do it? So that's a way that you can find experience. Another way is, you just go on PubMed and you look up things that you're interested in. Where is there a topic that you're passionate about, and what is going on? What needs to improve? That's something that my PI for my pediatric study, he told me that. He was like, you want to look into something, you want to see what is going on, what are the problems, and what could I do to change that? And so how do you gain the experience? What if there could be professors, researchers at your school, possibly? That'd be nice, right? You can be like, hey, you can email them or go to their office. With COVID, not really a thing, but you can email them and ask, is there anything going on right now? Or is there anything in the future? Or can I start a study? That's something that I did. It's possible. Alternatively, you can look at different, maybe in your community, you can look, for me, so I ended up striking a connection with a researcher down in Harvard. I emailed 10 or so researchers in the Boston area, and I was just like, why not? Why not see if there's something else out there that I'm interested in? I was interested in STEM research, stem cell research. And so I reached out, and then eventually one of them responded to me, and I just started this connection with him. And we ended up having a few phone calls, and then eventually he was offering me a position. And so it's possible, it's out there, but you may have to go the extra step and work that much harder if you don't have those resources right at your fingertips, at your school, whatever it may be. And so that's kind of like my biggest advice I can give for that. And I do have a YouTube video out on that currently, and I do have an email template that you can use. And I found that really useful, just being concise. You're hitting those key points, and you may be able to strike a position with that person. And then what if no one has availability? At least you're reaching out. You can still build a connection. You can say, that's great to hear, and it's great to hear that you're interested in working with me. And I understand that you are busy and you may not have the money for a student, whatever it may be. And you can say, well, let's touch base later, and see what's going on. And possibly a year down the line, they're going to be like, I have availability. Are you still interested in working with me? At least you're showing that initiative. That's going to stand out most definitely. And for me, why I decided to publish, so I published one in my college journal, which was the pediatric study, and for the genome one, that was in the microbiology journal. And so I wanted to do the pediatric publication because I was passionate about it. I wanted to bring awareness to it. Children are not recognized for anxiety disorders early on. So I wanted to be like, hey, this is what I've been doing. This is what I found. And this is why it's important. And also to encourage other students to share what they learn, and to really try to find what they love and what they get excited talking about, because I guarantee you will just love it so much better, and you will feel like you got so much more of that experience. And with everything in life, but just, especially when you're trying to think about what you want to do during your pre-med years, just do what, it's easier said than done, yes, but try to just find what you want. And if you don't like it, then cool, at least you tried it, and try something else and tweak and learn from those mistakes. And publishing in the microbiology journal, that one was exciting for me because I was like, this is awesome. I get to publish in a academic journal and receive feedback, and be a first author and see what that whole process is like. So if you're able to have the opportunity, that'd be awesome. And you can also, when you talk with researchers, people that you're interested in working with, you might say, hey, so what's it looking like for publishing wise? I kind of interested in publishing, and I know it's down the line, but I just want to kind of open up that communication with you. And they're not, if they're going to be offended by that, whatever it may be, then maybe they're not the right fit for you. So now some things is do you guys see yourselves on my screen?
No.
Okay, good. I just hope that I wasn't in the way the whole time. Okay. So now some things that I recommend, healthcare experience, key. You're just not going to get it anywhere else. Like you're working directly with the patients. You have, and working directly with the patients, right? So if you're a scribe, yes, you get to learn about how to write a good soap note. You get to write how to write the summary after, like what the physician writes, the notes, the aftercare summary. You get to learn about like the little details of medicine in a way, right? But for me, working as a licensed nursing assistant, and I was just using scribe as an example, but working as a licensed nursing assistant, I was, feeding, I was cleaning, I was putting to bed, I was getting ready for the day, I was providing emotional support, I was talking with someone when they were crying to me that they felt like moving to a nursing home, that their whole life before them was just thrown away. And so being able to sit there and listen and realize the importance of that listening, I think was just so tremendously impactful for me that I feel like I don't know if I would have gotten it as much anywhere else. And those healthcare experiences are going to be really helpful when you have your interviews. They're going to love it. You're going to say, and they're going to love that. But here's the thing, don't think that you have to be an LNA. You can be an EMT, you can be a scribe, and you can still talk on those points. But that's just from my experience, that's what kind of like impactful things that I've gotten from that experience. And just to reiterate, finding things that you're passionate about, it just makes everything easier. It flows better. It makes you feel in a better mindset, as opposed if you're stuck doing something that you're just like, I just did this to check a box off. Most admins are going to see that anyways. And building strong connections, I'd say you don't have to force this, but uh, if you're just, I would say, um, interested in getting to know the people that are teaching you, showing that you are, don't just go to a class and then you're done and then you leave. Like, at least be like, hey, it's nice. I'm so and so. I am, this is my first year here, or whatever it may be. Just building those, and it'll come naturally. You'll start to build a connection with them. I know for me, I had strong about 7 letters of recommendation, like the max it was, and they're like my friends. Like at this point, those people that wrote those letters, I had just been building those connections, like kind of like friends over the past 4 years or so. And then also, and actually to go off of that as well, is that those are like mentors as well. You can use them as a way to talk about some things that are stressing you out, or things that you feel like the school should be doing differently, or you know
I think the screen is frozen right now, guys. So give us a few seconds and we'll see if it comes back. So today's speakers signal seem to be a little bit of scratch. It should be back in a few minutes, a few seconds.
did my thing bump me out?
Yes, you're
Okay, sorry about that. That was, were you guys able to hear me towards the end before it pushed me out?
yes, we were able to hear you pretty much until right up to when you left the call, when it kicked you
Okay.
out.
Okay. All right, let me dive back into this. Okay. Um, yeah, so using resources early on and diversifying them. And I say this because it's nice to be able to get different viewpoints on things. It'll be really nice because you'll get to have a more well-rounded idea of kind of what other people are saying, and you also get to meet more people. I think that is that's something I value a lot, and I found that's really helpful for me. And ultimately, the biggest thing is taking care of your physical, mental, and emotional health. Everything is connected, and so I know from personal experience that it it will get stressful, and I'm not gonna you know be fake about that point. I did stressed out. I was I had anxiety about things. I felt burnt out. Like I've been there before, and so I say this not to scare any of you, but to be real with you and to tell what if you're experiencing that. And I was being fake about it, and I said, oh, it was great, it was walking in a park. It wasn't. And so if you ever experience that, you can think, okay, Claudia, I remember she talking about that, like that's normal. You and feel like you're the only one. And some resources that I used, I would say, more to applying. The Holy Grail. I'm so
Not sure why Zoom is glitching so much. Hopefully it
here.
stabilizes.
Do you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Do you guys hear me?
We can hear you, but you seem frozen right now.
I'm frozen.
Yes.
Do you guys see my screen though? Like let me share. Do you guys see that?
Yes, we can see your screen.
All right, I can just do that. That's okay. I just switched to my hotspot, so it should be okay.
Okay,
Um, and so some resources I used, Dr. Ryan Gray, his books, well, his resources are the Holy Grail. I used his personal statement book, and I also used his interview book, and I'm not sponsored by him at all. Like, he provides clear examples. He uh, he goes into depth about everything. He also has a Facebook page for other pre-med people to connect. I think it was like the pre-med group or the pre-med. I don't remember the name, but it was like the pre-med group or something like that. But please at least check it out. Like it's absolutely awesome. And he also has an interview book with so many different types of questions, example questions that could be useful when does everybody hear me?
Yeah, we
Oh,
can
okay.
hear you. I think with the problem with that one user's thing.
Okay. Great. Okay. Thank you everybody too. You guys are all like giving input. That's nice of you guys. And so I definitely recommend joining his Facebook group. And also he has a podcast. I would listen like during my drives, like, oh, MCAT car is going to talk about that for a little bit. He'd like get people from different sectors. He'd also talk with people from admission committees. So big key thing. And I actually have it right here, the interview book, so I can show you guys, but it's just like, you've got tons of questions, like miscellaneous questions. You've got questions on ethical and moral questions. You've got opening questions. I went through plenty of these. And so I actually, single place that I interviewed with, it was my favorite to interview. That is my strongest thing, like person to person, being able to like express myself, like as opposed to a piece of paper, you can't really express yourself to the extent of in person or face-to-face interactions. And so this was a great way to practice. And I also used my college to do mock interviews. This is so important because you cannot be extremely successful with your interviews unless you act like you are actually having that experience. And so this may be like so far for you guys. I'm not sure. I'm sure there's a variety of different, you guys are in different kinds of points in your life. But that is key thing. Like, you're going to be put on the spot. You're going to be asked a question. You want to be asked the questions you weren't expecting, because if you're prepping yourself, you can only do it to a certain extent. But able to act and what's your posture like? For me, it was that maybe I was like too lean back. I looked more relaxed, so I like would sit up more. All these little things are just they go a long way. And then I used also MSAR, which is I think it's the medical school admission requirements or recommendations, whatever it may be, but I just refer to it as MSAR. It's ridiculous. You have to have a subscription. As opposed to Choose DO, but MSAR is for the allopathic schools, and you do it has stats on what's the percentage of the students that were accepted or applied, so applied and matriculated what was their research experience, what percentage of them had lab, what percentage of them was volunteer, did volunteer, but what percentage had clinical, etc. And then it's for each, like all of the allopathic schools, and it's pretty much all of them. They also have the Caribbean on there as well. And for Choose DO, that was for DO, and it's just a website, but same stuff. You've got not to the detail as MSAR, but you still got, all the schools, you got the class size, the mission statements, the percentages of, I think they have some stats on applicant profiles, but also the schools have them on their website themselves. I also used my college advisor, not too much like my pre-med advisor, but I still wanted to use that resource and see if that was helpful at all. And I did get, they had stats on their students at the school, how many applied, how many got accepted. So it was good to at least stay in the loop of it. But I didn't really use that pre-med advisor that much. But that I did have to have the committee interview. And so I can also talk about that because that's required from almost all schools, or recommended. And if you don't provide one, they're going to want to know why you didn't provide one. And then SDN, so this is Student Doctor Network. I don't know if all of you know of it, but it's kind of has a bad rap a little bit because there have been stories of people that are rude on it, or are gunners, or are a little bit more toxic. And so be very careful about how much time you spend, because you can go into a rabbit hole with that site. You can spend hours just ruminating over this person's stat and that, and what should I do, and this person got this on the MCAT, and I should be worried about this. It got me nowhere. So learn from my experience, unless you want to try it out yourself and you're just that kind of person that just needs to experience it themselves. But that would probably be my last thing on the list. But I have heard of some collaborations with Ryan Gray and SDN, the president, or whoever it is that runs it, of trying to make it a better environment. But there's still so many years of that. I think that kind of that culture, as opposed to Ryan Gray, he's the opposite. He's like positivity, trying to be welcoming, trying to be accepting of the ideas and the questions that people bring. And so that's why he's like my number one in terms of advice. So now I'm gonna just say now for questions. And sorry I took so long. I hope that I was able to give useful information throughout all of that, but I'd love to take any questions regarding anything that I went over, or if you have a personal question, like your own situation, I can also answer stuff like that as well.
It's very helpful. Thank you so much, Claudia, for speaking. If y'all have any questions, feel free to unmute or put it in the chat.
I have a question. Hi, thank you so much for presenting.
Of course.
I'm interested in the MD PhD program. What do you think of that kind of program?
I did consider it in the beginning, but ultimately I don't want to center my whole life around, because with the MD PhD, you're going to spend most of your time doing research. And at the same time, you can switch that, but most of the time they're going to want to do more research. But it's nice because you get to integrate your own clinical experiences with the research that you're doing. And so I know that STEM, the one in Boston, who is he does the stem cell research, he was an MD PhD, and he got to do, he was a surgeon, he got to do surgery, and then he also got to do the stem cell research. So I'd say if you're interested in it, definitely go for it. It's possible. And I would also say that to have good experience in research, possibly try to get a publication, but just don't force it, but don't force the publication, but also try find what you're passionate about. It'll show. You can go to research conferences. I was able to win a poster presentation for one of the years that I went to. I was able to present at Harvard's. They have a New England Science Symposium like those experiences are still great to add on to that if you want to apply for MD, PhD. And I do believe that it's a little harder to get into MD, PhD, like based on the stats, but I don't know too much about like personal experience, and I don't know anybody from that I knew from my school that applied to MD, PhD. But there are a few people that I've seen on TikTok that are like, oh, I'm applying MD, PhD. So I hope that helps. And if you have like a follow-up question for that, I'd be definitely open to trying to answer.
Thank you.
Of course. Have you already started to do some research?
Yeah, I'm a master's student right now, and it's a
Oh,
gap year. So yeah, I'm continuing what I did in undergrad research and just trying to see what I would like to do in the future.
oh, that's exciting.
Hey Claudia, we have some questions in the chat that I'm gonna read out.
I can read them if you want, or actually, unless you want to read them so other people can like hear it, or because I
Whichever
can.
you prefer.
Uh,
You want me to read it out?
you can read it out so everyone can kind of listen in.
Okay. So the first question was, when you wanted to publish your papers, did you work under a PI or was it fully independent work?
I worked under a PI, one PI. He had a grant from the NIH that I was able to use to fund getting the organism. And then I sequenced it. I isolated it. I sequenced it. I did the workup, did the program to look at the different tRNAs, all the genetic numbers and values and figures to for the paper itself. But he was there to kind of like be my supervisor. So I was still the first author, but he was kind of like the PI, I would say, kind of like the master of it. And then, but for my paper, that one, I wrote the entire thing, but I had a PI who was the main study, and I was doing like studies from that study, kind of like a secondary analysis. But in terms of, yeah, I wrote it all. They would look at it, give feedback, things to improve, things to change, things to leave out. And so, yeah.
Our next question is, what classes do you recommend taking in high school to prepare for medical school?
That's hard because only you can only retain so much from high school. Like it's different too. College, you have a different kind of like more emphasis on content, or you have more complex content, or you're diving deeper into things that you may not get. Like there may be differences in the depth of what you get. So in terms of classes, like if you really want, I would say maybe take anatomy so that you can get a feel of anatomy, and maybe when you go to medical school, you'll be like, oh, like this is just kind of like reiterating or just coming back to me. But for me, I didn't like think about that. I didn't really focus on any of that. It was just college mostly. I took like all my pre-med courses. Make sure you do not take the pretty sure like no schools take AP credit. But if you do take like biology, maybe you can take an upper level in college without taking bio again. So
Sorry, go ahead.
but yeah, in terms of, I don't know, preparing, it's maybe take genetics if you can, maybe some physics. I don't know, maybe just to help you when you're in college. But it's not. I don't feel like I have like a big desire, like, oh, I should have taken a certain class during high school. So, but if I were to do any, say maybe anatomy, maybe physics, maybe bio and chem, so that you feel like you have a good hand on it when it comes in college.
The next question is, so you recommend a gap year between undergrad and applying to medical school, or at least a semester? Do you want me to repeat it?
I mean, it depends on the gap year. It depends on where you are in life. It depends on what you have going on. I was moving from, my dad retired from the military, and we were in Washington and just figuring out where we wanted to settle. And so it just kind of worked out, like, taking a gap year. Um, uh, oh, you said, sorry, between undergraduate and applying to medical school, or at least a semester. What is the, what do you mean? Like, would that person apply? I mean, if you're gonna like graduate a semester early, but still same thing. It depends on where you're at, depends on what you are. Like for me, I needed a break. I needed to decompress. I needed to save some money. I wanted to travel. I wanted to spend time with family, because I knew that when I started med school, I'd have like no time, and that's pretty much what's going on right now. So yeah, I'd recommend it if you want to just, you've been going nuts, especially if you've been going nuts during undergrad and you graduate and you're like, I just want to maybe explore myself some more. It's fine. The age of getting into med school, like the average age, keeps on increasing each year.
Next question is, what are your thoughts on Caribbean medical schools?
I did not think about applying to Caribbean medical schools. However, from what I've heard, there's still amazing physicians that come out of there. They're still matching into U.S. residencies. I have seen some people say that it's a little bit harder to get into residencies in the U.S., but I know a friend of mine that has a doctor. He went to a Caribbean medical school, but went up to Dartmouth for residency. So there's going to be, I mean, just like going to osteopathic school, there's stigma with that as well. And so there's stigma with Caribbean medical schools as well. But I personally don't have anything against it. And no matter what, there's physicians coming out of there that are still amazing physicians. So.
The next question is, what type of knowledge did you have to have before doing research? Did they teach you what you needed to know while you were working, or were you expected to know beforehand?
For all of my research, there wasn't too much like training with it. It was, I had taken statistics beforehand, so doing the analyses were pretty straightforward and not too bad to do. And my PIs were very understanding, and they would be like, all right, let me walk you through this, let me tell you how to do whatever it may be. Same with my lab research. He taught me throughout it, this is the key things to do. I'm also going to refer you to a student to give you some additional knowledge, sharing some notes. So, but with the stem cell, the one from Harvard, he had mentioned to me that there would be extensive training beforehand. So pretty sure it just depends on the research you're doing. And if you don't have prior experience, then yes, you might need to have some background. And I do know some students that I knew from college that their professor or their PI that they were going to work with was like, oh, maybe you should take cell culture as you're working with me, so that you can learn the skills of like passing cells or whatever it may be as we're doing research. So it's kind of like a 2-for-1 kind of deal with them.
The next question is, in interviews or the application, how do you address low grades or W's on your transcript from earlier years? In my case, I had 2 W's from my first year. Because of those, I'm considering taking a post back. I'm not sure how they would be perceived.
For applications, sometimes they give the opportunity to say, you have like, the question is, if you have something that you'd like to address, please put this space as the opportunity to do so. So that can be an opportunity to talk about that, and definitely putting a positive spin on it, talking about what you've learned and what you hope to bring from those experiences in the future. That's always very important. You don't just want to be like, oh, I didn't do good in these areas, and so yeah, I'm sorry for it, or I hope it doesn't reflect badly on me. And so that's it. Like, you definitely want to hone in on what did you learn from that? And maybe why did that happen? Were you experiencing something? They're usually going to be pretty understanding about that. If you're transparent and you're not just like, I don't know, like if you only spend an hour on that, writing that. And then for the interview, you can also just be like, hey, to be honest, like I was going through a rough time, and it's something that I'm not proud of, but now moving forward, I definitely learned from it. And, I'm now doing, I did a post-bac, and I felt like just widening my knowledge, and it's been a great experience thus far. And I'm so excited to be able to apply what I've learned in the future. So there's, and also Dr. Ryan Gray, he talks about like students that are in those boats. Like I had these W's, or I had these low grades, and this is how you may kind of craft that in your personal statement or in your secondaries.
The next question is, why specifically did you choose UNE, and what drew you to that medical school compared to other options you had?
UNE, well, first it was some of the, in no particular order. There was location into it, considering the fact that I was already living in New Hampshire, and this is only in Bedford, Maine, about an hour and a half from home. And UNE, oh my goodness, the community there is fabulous. Like, when I was interviewing there, there was like maybe 5 students that walked by that were just like, hey, like, how's it going? Or good luck, you guys, or or cracking jokes with the admin. And there was even the director of admissions that was just sitting with us as we were waiting. So they were just really awesome. And I also knew the one student that had went to my school that was going there. She was a first year, and she was also giving me insight, and I got to shadow her. And then now that I'm in at UNE, it's like I have the best cohort, because of COVID, we're in cohorts. Everyone is like trying to make study guides for each other. I know one of my friends, Santhi, she makes study guides, and I review those during like our histology test. And I'm just like, this is amazing. Keep sending me these. She's just like, great, that sounds good with me. And just everybody is very collaborative, very supportive. And I saw a glimpse of that during that interview, and it just transmitted ever since starting. And I didn't see as much of that, like, I would say that feeling that just, it really resonated with me strongly at UNE. And they're very big on communities. So they're like, I think their secondary is like, why do you want to be with us? Like, what do you bring? They're very interested in that. And then, yeah, pretty much why that drove me to that medical school compared to the other options I had. I got accepted. I received interviews, went to 4, got accepted to 4, and that was it was hard for me. I was like not sure about a few, but after I went to that interview, and I was like, this is awesome, I'm going to do this.
The next question is, I'm a senior looking to take a gap year when I graduate. For people looking to take a gap year for a mental break, what are some ways you can still keep up with your skills up to date so that it doesn't look like you wasted a year or did nothing to admission?
I mean, that depends. If you think wasting a year was you like traveling, that's not wasting a year. If you felt like during that year you wanted to learn a new skill, or you can honestly just be like, I've been doing this for 4 years, and I've been going so crazy at this. I thought to myself, I need to take this mental break. I need to do this for myself, because at the end of the day, your own mental health is vitally important. That transmits with everything. So they should understand that. They will understand that. Hopefully they will. Hopefully they all will. But them reading that and saying, wow, like this person saw that, took action with that, and took the year to find themselves or to rejuvenate that's totally fine. Like my med school is so big on wellness. They're always like wellness. They'll email us, they'll put at the very end, they're like, make sure you experience the nice weather, or it's so nice out, or I'm gonna go do some yoga, or they do like yoga every week on Zoom. So I would say don't think of it like you're wasting a year, or did nothing. Maybe do volunteering once a week, or once every 2 weeks, throughout the year. It's going to add up, and you're just doing little bits at a time, or pick up a new skill or something, or read books. Like, there's ways. Doing anything really is still like doing something. You don't have to be working at a nursing home in like I did for hours and hours at end, but I'd say don't stress about that. It's okay.
The next question is, what do you hope to specialize in?
I don't know. I'm trying to keep an open mind for what happens. I want to wait. I really like firsthand experiences, and so I felt like shadowing. I couldn't understand half of what they're saying. I couldn't. It's just so much different from that lens. And so I'm really looking forward to third year, when I'll get to actually apply what I've been learning and working with patients. I love like patient to patient patient interactions, as opposed to just, like thinking about or learning about biochem, learning about microbiology, learning about diseases and all these pathologies. Like, I don't know yet. So I'm just going to see what happens. But I do want to get my master's in public health during third, fourth year. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
The next question is, how do you begin to look at medical schools to attend, then to narrow them down?
I use the MSAR and the Choose DO. I looked at some like what could they be known for? Like UNE, big anatomy people. Do you guys hear? I said my internet connection's unstable. Is it good still?
Yeah, it works.
Okay, am I still frozen?
No, we could clearly see.
Okay. I never asked. And then and then narrowing them down. I mean, I would say apply to a good amount, but don't overdo it to the point where you just have too many secondaries to do. Start to narrow it down when you're like, okay, I'm getting some interview invites. I'm going to start to like look into like more in depth of what I'm working with. And if you're like, I'm not really liking what's going on, maybe add some more, because it's so expensive. I guess it really depends on kind of what everyone's situation is, but it was expensive. And so I know someone that applied to 40, and she ended up, because this was her second cycle, and she ended up getting like 20 invites, and she did really well in the cycle, but she said that she overdid it. And so I'd say do a solid amount based on what you're kind of looking at, your background and your application, and then start to add more if you're like, I don't know, but still apply early. But if you apply early, you have a little bit more of like a wiggle room to like add more, like whatever it may be. Instead of if you apply in December and then you want to try to like add more in February, you're on crunch time. So
our last question for the night is, how did you approach the MCAT?
Oh, the MCAT. Not my favorite test. So MCAT, I definitely bought all the AAMC stuff. That is like the gold standard. I did some exam cracker. I got some exam cracker practice tests. I got some Kaplan ones, I believe. My biggest thing was just like looking at practice, like making sure I was understanding how they're trying to show us these questions, how the thinking process has to be, because it's so much different from undergrad. Um, and also I would look up, like on Reddit, some people have their own study schedules or key things that they did, or I also use UWorld. That one's nice, has a lot of practice questions. But I would say, if I were to do it over again, really important to do is to do like the exam to get an idea of where you're at, and then going from there. Because if you wait too long, you won't be able to see where your weaknesses are, and then you may have just wasted that time, and just like ripping that band-aid off and getting a feel of what to expect, because it's a different beast. For me, it was definitely, because it's just college asks questions and makes us approach things differently, versus now that I'm in med school, it's so much like critical thinking, looking at cases, seeing things. You have to see it detailed but also broad, and seeing the implications and approaching like cases, and picking out the key things. Like it's just not, it's a different world. So for the MCAT, start to get to know it early on, what to expect and where you're at, what your weaknesses are, and practice questions are key for you to see if your studying is paying off. So
Thank you so much, Claudia, for speaking for us today. We hope the best in your journey. Thank you so much.
thank you.
If anyone
It
has
was-
any last burning question, you can unmute and ask now. Claudia, but in case a viewer had like a future questions, it does social at a platform. Actually, don't put your platforms, Instagram and TikTok. Those are good ways to reach out to you.
Yes, and I can put my oh great, you did. I can also put my email right there.
Okay,
If I can ask.
perfect. Thank you so much. So if y'all want to stay tuned to future things, just join us on our website, and we'll be emailing out updates. And thank you.
Eliza, were you speaking, or was that?
I had a last minute question, sorry.
Of course, yeah, go ahead.
What do you do when you're really stressed out during medical school? Like I see a lot of med students, like it's a lot of hours, it's definitely different from undergrad. And like how do you see the light at the end of the tunnel with so many years ahead of you?
To be quite honest, when I first started, I was unbelievably stressed out. I have pictures of myself first starting, and I looked so drained. Like I had like massive bags under my eyes. I just didn't, I was like, I don't know how this is possible. And then I realized you just can't memorize everything. It's just, it's so much information. So I started to first my studying with what was going on and what the best study tools were for me, and using third-party resources so I can memorize it quicker. For example, ClaudiaXMed, which is, I love it so much, but it just made everything cut down. So when I was able to cut that down, I was able to put in more, like going out for dinner in Portland, or making dinner and going to the beach and eating it, like trying to integrate a nice view as I ate, like a way to de-stress. I also have a piano here, so I'll just play on the piano and relax, de-stress that way. Or whenever whenever I drive to school, I love to just like listen to some music. So it's like just integrating these little bits of sanity throughout the week, throughout the day. Have been our faculty did like a check-in, and one of my classmates was just like, I need to de-stress. I need to socialize. I need to, have like a beer at the brewery in Portland, or whatever it may be. Like it does pay off. and also like working out. I've been trying to do that more because it just is also a way to like revitalize, because I've been so, in the beginning I was so sedentary. I would just sit, study, but like there's only so long you can study before your brain's just like, I can't retain it anymore. So it's, for me, it was really hard at first. It's gotten better, but just because you'd be surprised how many other people are feeling the same things that you are. And so it'd be nice. It's nice too, because you're just like, wow, like I'm able to like connect with you on this. So those are kind of the factors and things that I've used so far, and hopefully I find out some more.
Thank you so much, Claudia, for your time, and thank you everyone for coming viewing. It's a great session, went over by 10 minutes, so that's great.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
Very informative. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Claudia, for joining us tonight. Sorry.
Of course. Yeah, I had a great time. Thank you.
Have a good night.